Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And I actually hadn't planned on filming a video over here today, and I was just sitting here. I just finished up some other videos, and I was getting ready to go downstairs and start uploading them, and then vlog, and I was like, let me read through some of the comments from my last couple videos that I posted over here. And I started, it seemed like every third comment was somebody sharing that they had had a parent or a friend that had passed away. So first of all, I just want to say I am so sorry for anybody that's going through loss right now and going through pain. It's when you're in the middle of it, it just seems like you can't see outside of it. And I will share this. When my mom passed away, I had a dear friend of mine that I worked with years before that, and I'll never forget that she said to me, I think it was in a card, I don't remember, but she said to me, I'm never good. I never know what to say at times like this, and so just know that I love you, and I'm here for you if you need me. And I remember, and I told her, I said, I'm going to steal that from you, because I think that's so fantastic, you know? I think in times like this, we don't really ever know what to say. We don't know whether to say, I'm sorry, or I'm so sorry for your loss. I can remember standing in line at my mom's viewing, and people would come up to me, many of which I didn't even know, because they were people that were like friends of my mom's that I hadn't known, I maybe met once or twice, and they would come up and they would say, oh, my condolences, or I'm so sorry. And I knew, we don't teach that in this world, right? We don't teach what to say in moments like that. I think, interestingly enough, that when I look back on my life, those moments that I have not known how to move through, that have been the hardest for me to move through, have been moments of grief. And, and I want to extend this as well to when we're not just talking about grief of losing a loved one or losing a pet, which I have found to be just absolutely heart-wrenching. I actually, I said something in a video years and years and years ago, and I said something about, having lost pets is sometimes even harder, because when my mom passed away, I was kind of prepared for that. I knew that that's what we were looking at. But with our dogs, I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know it was going to happen on the day that it did, And I can remember that people took issue with the fact that I said that. And just recently there have been research studies that come out that say that when you lose a pet, it's a different emotional response and a different grieving response than losing a person, because of how our brains are wired to our attachment to pets. I don't know about that, but what I do know is that no single grief that I have ever felt, from losing a person, losing a pet, losing a friend, losing a parent, none of those have ever, there's not one can be comparable to the next. They are all completely different. My relationships with each of them were different. Even the 3 dogs, that would be the easiest to compare, right? My relationships with each dog were completely different. My husband and I have talked a lot about this. Losing our last dog, Boo Radley, has really taken a toll on me. And I think one of the things is that, number one, it's the end of an era of us having had 3 dogs together. And the other part of that is that, his brother Tucker passed away 2.5 years before him. So it was just Alex and I and Boo Radley for 2.5 years. And so I developed a different relationship with Boo Radley than I had had with his brothers, Pee-Pee and Tucker, because it was all 3 of them all the time. And so it was a very individual relationship that I had with Boo Radley, and completely different than the grief that I felt with my mom. I can remember my mom passed away, and I would tell people it's this surreal feeling. You cannot explain it to somebody unless you've gone through it. That this person that has been there with you literally your entire life, that gave you life, is now gone. And I had a good relationship with my mother. I know a lot of people don't have good relationships with their parents, but whatever person raised you, whether it was a grandparent, aunt, or uncle, I think it's similar to that. I've had friends of mine that have lost children. I cannot even imagine. I have to believe that has to be the worst pain in the entire world. I cannot even imagine. I've lost friends of mine, and I think that each situation has been completely different. And I don't ever know what to say in that moment to people, I don't ever know what to say. I'll tell you what I do. What I try to say is, what do you need from me in this moment? What can I do for you? Well, I don't know what I need. Well, when you do know what you need, let me know. I try to be like my mom and my aunt and my best friend Tanya Jean, that they just show up for people. They dress up and they show up, or they suit up and they show up for people. And that's who I try to be today when somebody's going through that. I remember how when I was going through that, like with my, with my mom, and then my aunt was just there, and how helpful that was to me. I try to be that for other people today, because those were the things that were so helpful to me. In all honesty, the I'm so sorry's and the condolences and all that kind of stuff was nice. And I think the problem is that we don't in society, because we don't know. So if we don't know, how do we teach it to somebody what to say in those moments? So we don't know what to say. How many times have you ever like talked to somebody that's lost somebody and you're like, I don't even know what to say? Like, it's such an astronomical thing that what do you say to somebody in that moment? I mean, I'm sorry. Like, that just seems so, it seems so minuscule in the grand scheme of that this person has lost the most important person to them in their entire life. What do you say that has any meaning to it whatsoever? And I think to me, that's why the genuineness and the authenticity of my friends saying to me, I don't ever know what to say in times like this. So just know I love you. And if you need anything from me, I'm here for you. That meant so much to me. It was just like no BS, right? But I was reading these comments, and like I said, when I talk about this, whenever I talk about grief, I think one of the things that we don't talk, well, first of all, we don't talk about grief in society at all. I remember, I don't know when, 30 years ago now, that I took, a sociology class called Death and Dying. And I remember talking in that class and the professor saying, like, the one thing we don't talk a lot about in our society is the process of death. And, we read Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying, and talking about the normalization of our own mortality. We don't even talk about that, right? So then we don't really know how to talk about it to other people when we're experiencing grief. And I will tell you, one of the things I experienced is that in the hype of planning a funeral, in the hype of the immediacy of the loss and all that kind of stuff, we're surrounded by people. And I tell people this a lot. Don't forget somebody the week after the funeral. That's the most difficult time. I can remember, like, at my mom's funeral, so many people coming up to me and being like, we're going to go out to dinner once a week. I'm going to see you, blah, 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 whatever. Friends of my family's for years and years and years that I literally have not seen them since. And that's not on them completely. That's on me too. Like, my cousin Caroline is much better at keeping up with family friends than I am. That's partly on me too. But I think what was hard for me was that, in the moment, like, my mom was in the hospital, and then she passed away, and then we planned the funeral. And then I can remember the night after the funeral, I just was like, what's next? Like, I'm expected to move on, but I don't know how to do that. Nobody's taught me how to move on. And I've got all this stuff in my head, and I don't know what to do. And then, other than, like, my very close friends, like Tanya and Caroline and my Aunt Kathy and people like that, people stopped calling. People stopped checking on me. People, like, 2 days later, I wasn't getting, like, 10 phone calls a day. How are you doing? And I wasn't doing okay. I was not doing okay. So remember people when they're going through loss. Continue to check on them every week, every month, and ask them how they're doing. Whether it's a pet, whether it's a parent, whatever. It's so hard, And I wanted to do this video today, and I also want to say this. When I talk about grief on here, I also like to extend it to the grief of losing a job, which for some people that have been in jobs for 20 and 30 years, or even a job for a year that they've absolutely loved, that is so painful, whether they leave just because they choose to, or whether they get fired or terminated or have layoff. Like, the grief that's associated with losing a job is completely different than the other grief, but it's still grief. I think the grief of losing a romantic relationship or a friendship, where on social media you can see that that person is continuing to go on and thrive and have a life, is so painful. And in a way that you cannot compare that grief to anything else. It's not a comparable grief. It's the same to moving away from people that you knew your entire life. You move across country, and that's a grief. We experience grief on many, many different levels, and yet we don't know how to talk about it. It's the one thing that we don't talk about it enough. I don't know, maybe over here I need to be talking about it more. But I'm no expert on grief. I just know that I've gone through it. And so I wanted to make this video today because I wanted to share with you the most valuable lesson that I learned about grief. Well, two, I would say, but one of them I feel like people say all the time, and that is there is no time limit on grief, Years ago, I can remember somebody said something to me about, like, how long are you going to talk about my mom? Probably for the rest of my life. She was my mom. I miss her. Some days more than others. She's been gone 17 years now. It doesn't seem like she was just here yesterday. It seems like it's been a long time. It really does. It seems like my mom has been gone a long time. But I still miss her. I still smell her sometimes, and then hear her laugh, or hear a song that reminds me of her, or flipping through the channels and see a movie. I miss my mom. She was my mom. She's the only mom that I'm going to ever have, And I'll probably talk about her for the rest of my life. I'll probably talk about my friends that have passed away. They were part of my life. And it was a privilege. It was a privilege to be able to be a part of their life as well. There's no time limit on grieving. But I do know this. I don't want to be stuck in it for the rest of my life. And I know that the people that have passed away wouldn't want me to be stuck in it. I can remember my mom said, you know, like, well, I want you to be sad for a little while when I'm gone, but I want you to, like, before she was sick, she would say that. But she'd say, but I want you to go on and live your life. I had a life. You deserve to have a life as well. I know that if I ask any of the people that have passed away that I loved and they loved me, I know that they would say, no, I do not want you to be stuck in a state of absolute grief where you cannot move on, or move through the pain for the rest of your life. Like, that's not a life, you know? Like, you deserve to be free of that pain, and I want you to have that life. You know, my friend and I, our moms both used to love to dance in the kitchen, and we used to talk about dancing in the kitchen because our moms couldn't anymore, you know? And I think it's traditions like that keep them alive. But the most important thing that I absolutely learned about grief is that in the moment that you're feeling it, allow yourself to really feel it. I can remember hearing a song come on the radio, and just in that moment, or like, you know, on my iTunes or whatever, iPad, I don't even know what we had back then, but the Nanos or whatever they were called, I can remember in that moment, like Bob Dylan, Blowing in the Wind, you know, just in that moment, listening to it, allowing myself to bawl my eyes out, and just being present in the moment of grief. I think because I allowed myself those moments, I would even watch movies that like made me cry, like The Color Purple and My Dog Skip, and so many movies that my mom loved. I would watch specific parts of it. The end of Color Purple, when Miss Celie sees her sister. I mean, I can remember watching that when my mom passed away because she loved that so much, or The Way We Were, the end of it. And just allowing myself to cry, because that was one way for me to move through the pain. And I am a believer in moving through the pain of grief to the other side. I wouldn't be where I'm at today with the grief if I hadn't. And I think so many people just push it down. You know, even if you're at work and you have to take 5 minutes and you go, I just need to go to the bathroom for a second. Or if you're having a day where you're like, we can't really take days off, but you let people know, I'm struggling today. Let people know where you're at, you know? And then when you're at home, say, I'm going to just take the next half an hour. I'm just going to let myself feel all the feelings, look at all the pictures, and then after half an hour, I'm going to let myself continue to go on. Or an hour, whatever you need. But feel the feelings. Allow yourself to feel the pain. Don't push it down. One of the things that made me happy, and I don't mean this in a weird way, but that so many people felt comfortable in the comment sections of my video to allow us into your lives to say, my mom passed away, or my friend passed away, or whatever. Like, that's a privilege that you allowed us in the comment sections of a video. To know that, that's powerful. That's powerful. And just keep on doing that. Letting people know where you're at and allow yourself to feel your feelings. I don't know any tricks to get through grief. People ask me all the time, how do you get through grief? I don't know. Feel your feelings and let people know where you're at. You know, live out loud. I hope that helped. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.